Hey, welcome to the Daily Beard for March 25th, 2019. So this is going to be my one and only Star Wars video. Okay, here we go. I used to love Star Wars. I still love the original three. Loved them so much. They were my childhood. My first tattoo was a Star Wars tattoo. It was the Rebel symbol. It was on my arm. It is now covered over because I don't love Star Wars anymore. But I still am quite fond of the original three. So here's the thing. The original three Star Wars, and it's the only time I'm ever going to talk about this, were written as one chunk of a story. It was one thing. Lucas had basically taken a book all about myths and taken all of the myths, tropes, and put them into one story. And it was great. And the movie itself was revolutionary. It came out and did amazing things. And yeah, and I loved it. Now, cut to the prequels. So one of the things he did when writing episode 4, 5, and 6 was Lucas was like, I don't want to have to explain the universe. I want the universe to feel lived in. I don't want to look pristine and like, I want it to look older and run down. That's when the Millennium Falcon always looked crappy, even though I love that ship, right? And so he was like, I don't want to have to explain everything. I don't want to have to, like, we're going to jump into the story. And it was great and smart and brilliant. And then he decided to do prequels, and then he had to explain everything. And he's not very good at doing that. He's actually terrible at doing that. One line of dialogue made a whole thing called the Clone Wars. So Luke mentions to Obi-Wan, you fought in the Clone Wars? Luke never mentions that. He never has to write a Clone War. But he did mention it because it was a throwaway line that Lucas thought was fun at the time. And now he has to make a whole war in the history, which he'd never written before. And I don't care if you're like, no, he didn't. He never wrote this crap before. He wrote one story, broke it into 3 parts. Hey, buddy. My dog's here. And then had to explain it later. So how Luke and Leia got separated, he had to figure that out. How Darth Vader was the father, he had to figure that out. He had to figure all this crap out. He didn't have to figure out all this stuff the first time around because he didn't want to, and it was great. But he's not really good at figuring them out. So he had all these plot points that he had to figure out, and it was like, so like Luke has to end up on Tatooine, and Princess Leia has to end up on Alderaan, and Yoda has to disappear somehow, and all this stuff, and he's bad at doing that. Now, here's why I'm talking about this. The other night, I watched Empire Strikes Back on VHS. Tons of fun. And some of the people watching me, they're all mid-20s, and they were mentioning, like, Obi-Wan says, and if you don't know anything about Star Wars, you don't stop watching the video anyways. But if you do, Obi-Wan says, Yoda taught me. And a couple of the people went, see, Yoda never taught him. And I'm like, stop talking about the prequels. And I'm like, because the prequels weren't written when this was written, and he had no intention of writing prequels. That was the point. It's all the money that just drove him nuts. But so he could say crap like that, and then he did a bad job explaining it all. And that's what stopped me loving Star Wars. Now, if you love the prequels because you were a kid and you grew up with the prequels, I don't fault you one bit. That's your Star Wars. That's your Star Wars, not my Star Wars. Hashtag not my Star Wars. But, let me, before you're like, you always hated them. No, actually, I saw freaking Phantom Menace like 4 times in the theater because I was so hyped for a Star Wars movie. And then Attack of the Clones, and the more I watched it, and the more I digested it, and the more I actually thought about it, the more I hated it. And then I know people think Last Jedi, or not the Last Jedi, what's the Revenge of the Sith is great. I hate that one the most. And before anyone starts talking Jar Jar crap, Jar Jar is one of the least offensive things about the prequels. Really, he out of all my gripes, he's like super low down on the list. I fell out of love with Star Wars. I hated the way he handled the pre-story. I loved the original 3. I hate the prequels. They don't exist in my house. My daughters have never seen them. I will never show them that. They can, when they hit 18 and move out on their own and all that stuff, and they want to watch the prequels, they can do that. I'll be disappointed, but they can do that. But I choose to, my Star Wars is those 3 movies. Now, the new Star Wars stuff, I actually quite like most of the new Star Wars stuff. If you're like the stuff that Disney's made, I'm not even going to talk past that saying I actually like most of it. Rogue One actually is my favorite out of the thing they've done. Solo was boring. But talking about the originals, talking about Star Wars, he was great because he didn't have to explain things. And then he had to explain things and everything went to crap. Yeah, that's it. I don't it just bothered me because like a couple of the guys were like, oh, and this, and then this, and it's like, this doesn't line up. And I'm like, of course it doesn't line up because that didn't exist. And he's a terrible story writer for trying to figure things out after the fact. Plus, he's not a really good movie maker. He had lightning in a bottle with Star Wars, and then he hired a really good director for the second one, and then muddled through the third one. And by second one and third one, I mean fifth and sixth. But, you know, yeah, this is the only time I'm ever going to talk about this. I'll never mention Star Wars again, other than, oh, I saw the new Star Wars movie, or we saw Return of the Jedi, but I'm never talking about it like this again. This is it, people. This is all you're getting out of me. Some of you are probably annoyed about that. Some of you are probably thrilled that I'm never going to talk about this again, but I had to put it out there. This is my Star Wars talk. Thanks for still watching if you're here. Stay bearded. And may the Force be with you for the first real 3 movies. For good midichlorians. Bye.